Hello everyone, this is Space with Project Starlight in Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with real solar system and a whole bunch of other mods, including other star systems with real exoplanets. The goal of Project Starlight is to map out the future history of human space exploration all the way up to getting to other star systems. And we're beginning here with a test of a nuclear saltwater system being launched. And I'm using parts from Far Future Tech as well as KSP Interstellar. KSP Interstellar is for the Habitation modules, whereas Far Future Tech is for the fuel tanks and propulsion unit. And so we're using a nuclear saltwater engine. This is the propulsion system being launched on my Kasei II rocket introduced in the previous video that I uploaded. And so this propulsion unit is the engine plus the first set of fuel tanks. There's going to be 4 sets of fuel tanks, and it'll all be assembled in this video. This is the assembly video, and in the next video I'll talk about what this particular spacecraft does. This nuclear saltwater spacecraft is called the Synchronicity. I had previously used that for an upgraded ISS module that I used for space exploration, but I'm reusing the name here. So there's the Synchronicity ship, which is a nuclear saltwater ship. The specific impulse of the nuclear saltwater engine is 6,700 seconds. So it is beyond the capabilities of ion engines, but not too far beyond. And so it's a modest sort of system. However, nuclear saltwater is still a very dangerous sort of system because it does spew out radioactive stuff out the tail, so we would rather it not be aimed at Earth. In this particular case, I might take some liberties with that, but technically it should be boosted up higher. This remains just a test of the launch sequence, and the capability of the Kasei II launcher, as described in the previous video as well, is that it can launch 170 tons to low Earth orbit in this configuration and then 220 tons with boosters. The fairing sort of deal here is for if we were to reuse the first stage. Right now we are not reusing the first stage, and with these heavy fuel tanks, these are 170 ton fuel tanks. The one with the engine that we just launched was actually underfueled a little bit. Otherwise they are generally 170 tons with the radiators and everything, so right at the capacity of the Kasei II without its boosters. It gets us to orbit. The stage still has just enough delta V left over to handle the rendezvous, which I do. KOS is handling the launch, of course, but I do go through all the things. It is all physical, unfortunately. It took a little bit of extra time because of that. And there are 4 170 ton units in the propulsion section, and then 2 habitat launches. Those habitat sections are 80 tons apiece. I increased the mass of them from the KSP Interstellar configurations that I previously released. I'll make further adjustments, and those adjustments are part of the point of Project Starlight. The point is to allow people to play out the future of human space exploration and to give sort of blueprint for that initially, but of course everybody else will want to do it better, and it's not my goal to do the best possible rendition. It's my goal to just map it out and give this sort of template, and then people can then build on that. So that is the goal of Project Starlight, and I'll have a full map. I'll introduce the sort of scheme of things and how each different type of drive will fit into that scheme of things, and then I'll sort of play it out. But this is still just a test. There's going to be plenty of testing. I mean, all I ever do is testing, really. So a lot of this will inform improvements to the RO configurations for KSP Interstellar and Far Future and other mods. It might inform other mods that I am going to make, like the upgrade to the Kasei rocket. In fact, in this video I introduced an upgrade to these fairings because I needed longer fairings. So I created a new model that lengthened the fairings to accommodate the habitat sections, and those will be centrifuges, and they're fairly awkward to launch. But not as awkward as they could have been. But they did require larger fairings, so I made that part. I adjusted the existing fairings to accommodate them. And so things like that have to happen. And eventually I do want to release a part pack, including the Kasei rocket and all the other parts that I use, the engines and stuff like that. But they have to all work right. And also, organizing them is complicated because when I originally made them, they are all in different folders in game data. Well, no, they're all in EDB mods, but they're all in different folders in EDB mods. And to some extent, I can reduce the size of the mod by consolidating the textures on them. And so I'd like to make the whole mod smaller, more organized, more compact before I release it. But it is my intention to release all the things that I use in the context of this project, and then also tell you what other mods you might need to replicate what I did. But the mod list is in flux, so if you ask me what mods I'm using, I just deleted some, and then I added some back. So it's all being changed as I go along. I'd also like to get the mods working a little bit better with each other. For instance, the KSP Interstellar radiators, which I like the look of a lot better than I do these. But those KSP Interstellar radiators don't work with the system heat system that Far Future uses. And so doesn't actually cool the engines shut down. So I have to use these radiators. And I would like more compatibility between the two and more specialization so that we can use all the parts as we see fit. And there are still good parts in KSP Interstellar, even though people sort of look down on that, but they give more variety, whereas the Far Future tech all has a particular look to it that it would be nice to mix up occasionally. So I do intend to do that. That's why I have the habitats be from KSP Interstellar in this case. So this is the final fuel section that I'm launching here. And I never actually tire of that fairing arrangement. It took some thought to figure out how to reuse the first stage by having it fly forward and land in the Bahamas and all that business, and then of course make the fairing that allowed it to release the second stage, which is the full diameter of the first stage, while still giving it its resulting nose so that it can land like an airplane. And I made the heat shielded bottom of it, the wings, and the landing gear. Well, I didn't model those. The wings and the landing gear are just procedural or the stock parts. But yeah, I've tested out the whole landing of the first stage before. We just can't do it in this situation because we're carrying the maximum payload for the launcher, the 170 tons with each load. So we're just not putting the reusable fairings to use in this case. The whole thing gets dumped anyway. Alright, so here we are docking the final fuel segment onto the assembly, and we have enough radiators now for the engines. We need all of those radiators. It does a nice calculation, system heat does, and so that is certain, assuming that it's telling me the truth. And now we can launch the first of the 2 habitat modules. Now this does not take all of the capacity of the launcher. I wish I could launch both habitat modules at the same time, but they're just too physically big. They need too much volume. We wouldn't be able to put it on here without it looking really horrible. So one at a time it is, but they're 80 tons dry with the food, water, and oxygen and all. It's more than 80 tons, obviously. But one little quirk I discovered a little bit too late with these centrifuge modules from KSP Interstellar is that even though I tried to add a modular fuel tank and add more food, water, and oxygen to them, something in the configuration for this centrifuge rewrites the food, water, and oxygen contents before launch. So eventually they'll deplete, but the configuration actually says, no, you have this much food, water, and oxygen, and that's that, which is a little bit inconvenient. And so we're actually launching this one with less than it ought to have. As a result, instead of sending 12 Kerbals, which is what I was supposed to do, we are going to end up sending 8. I add extra tanks to the next one so that it can accommodate at least 8 like that. Technically, the centrifuge, when expanded, is supposed to be able to contain 24, but I have no idea how to convince Kerbal that this is true. So I'm settling with each of these being able to carry 6, and that's fine. They are centrifuges in that they expand into rings that then rotate, so it's like that. Fortunately for me, the center of mass stays the same because it's just an animation, and I don't think you can have the center of mass change during an animation. I don't know. Probably Pekka with his plugin skills could figure that one out. But in this case, the center of mass stays in the center hub area, which makes it easier to attach it to the eventual assembly. Otherwise, we'd have to worry about all that stuff stacked to one side, and that wouldn't be great. So you can see the RCS is all at the hub, and it'd be horribly imbalanced in actuality. I would probably just expand the whole ring and dock it like that at this point, though, if it wasn't the case that the center of mass stayed at the hub. Alright, so here we are approaching. In the next video, I'll have the UI up and you'll be able to see all the details and all the resources and all that business. I just thought it'd be nice to have this be a little bit more cinematic, especially since I was going to use KOS to launch it anyway. That said, altogether, I'm expecting 40,000 meters per second out of this. The crude portion is about 170 tons total in 2 segments, so 85 tons apiece when you count all the supplies. The centrifuges do include a water recycler and a oxygen regenerator, so there is some recycling of oxygen and the water with that. But then we have the drive section, and altogether the ship is a little over 800 tons. So that's how it all shakes up. So here the centrifuge is expanding. I do like this animation. It's good. It's just that the centrifuge itself is sort of awkward, but anything like this is going to be awkward to launch. At least it was packed up like this. This is not the worst. This is a pleasant part that KSP Interstellar includes. And it even has the little windows light up. Now, it's described as a particle accelerator ring, so technically that's supposed to be a particle accelerator, but then when it expands it has extra crew capacity, so I don't quite understand the balance of that. Is it a particle accelerator ring, or is it a crew ring? It seems to have a multiple personality disorder deal going on here. I don't care about the particle accelerator part, however, that does provide power. So there is that benefit to it. You'll note the supplementary solar panels on the fuel segments. That was necessary, of course. Here I'm deorbiting that stage finally. It was good to have it stay attached so that it could use its RCS to stabilize things, and in the case that there was some disaster, it could deorbit the nuclear saltwater thing safely. I don't think there's any place to deorbit it safely, actually, so we don't want that stuff anywhere near Earth. But anyway, let's set that aside for now. I'll probably, when it comes to actual Project Starlight business, if we were really doing this, possibly in the context of a solar system tourism series, I would boost all this stuff up higher. And we'd do that by slapping on the boosters and getting the extra capacity on the Kasei II rocket, and then the second stage would be able to get it higher up and safer. And so that would be my intention. For now, we're just doing it like this. So this is the final segment of the ship, the Synchronicity ship, our nuclear saltwater ship with the far future technology engine. So this is 6,700 seconds ISP. The one in KSP Interstellar, because I basically kept its stats as KSP Interstellar had it, actually has more ISP but doesn't look as good. So that's a trade-off. If you use the KSP Interstellar one, it has the better stats but it doesn't look as good. It also has less thrust, so there's that too. But that doesn't matter so much because I'm using Pekka's warp thrust module with it. The burn time on this engine is, I think, in excess of 4 hours. The nuclear saltwater engine, not the ones that are burning right now. But yeah, that would be painful to actually do, but we do have the warp thrust module, so hopefully it'll work correctly with that. I've tested it with it before, and so we can not worry about the burn time, and that will be a good thing. So anyway, this is in orbit. I get over to our assembly there. A lot of that work is done with the second stage still. But we do separate it. This does have little hydrogen container. We're using hydrogen gas RCS. It's only 260 seconds ISP, but it's enough to get us there and get us docked. So here, approaching to dock. All very scenic. But I hope to make even better ships. This is just the beginning. I will make fancier ships. I want to make ships that aren't so normal. looking. I'm not so we've done this sort of ship in sci-fi before kind of thing. I want to make weirder ships. But we'll start off with this. So we've got this. The ring's a little bit close to those radiators, isn't it? Maybe a standoff section would be nice. But there, we have 2 counter-rotating rings so that we don't have some weird angular momentum issue. That's the best I could do. Maybe we should have them on opposite sides. I think it'll be fine. But yes, counter-rotating rings is a good idea. And yeah, it's looking good, and I hope to send it to Mars in the next video. That's the goal. It needs to go to Mars and back quickly. None of this 3-year business. We're going there, we're getting people off, and coming back fast. So that's the deal. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.